But then maybe just as an intro to that, back to Ricardo's point. So rather than understanding the what you actually are doing, just trying to understand this grid method, like how is that actually more useful than what we do already with the Flexbox, for example? Because right now with the Flexbox, I can understand like how you have different divs and how then you can find them. In this case, how does it actually work? Do you have, because this is just a CSS code?
Yeah.
We need to have then some like 1, 2, 3, and 4 like as divs in the HTML page as well. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm seeing your page on the right side. Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, so this is just a container with some divs as the items. So we're dealing with the container properties right now. So divs will just deal with this div here. Oh, actually, yeah, we can see the rows and the columns are being created here for us with the purple dashes. I don't know if you can see that clearly, but Chrome is highlighting it for us.
Yep.
Oh yeah, so okay, this areas is a much better comparison to Flexbox. Grid template areas. Grid this defines a grid template by referencing the names of the grid areas which are specified within the grid area property. Repeating the name of a grid area causes the content to span those cells. A period signifies an empty cell. So the example here, let's say you have your header, your ads, advertisements, the actual content, like the article, and your footer. So just those 3 divs and the footer. You could use grid template areas like this, and you can see we have header going across the top in 3 columns. Then we have the article spanning the width of 2 columns, and then the aside, which I believe will be the ads here on the far right, and then footer spanning the 3 bottom rows. Sorry, bottom column. And then we can add the specific sizing for those, and then we go to those items and we use the strings that we use here for the layout. So the header would get header, article, aside, footer. Oops. Yeah, sorry. Page move. Right, so without using, I guess with Flexbox you would specifically set the header to be that width, and then you would have something separate for article and ads and footer, whereas you can do all of this with grid areas. So I think this is a really good alternative in that this code plus just using the string on the particular element that you want to target, you could come up with some really good layouts for your website, just like that. So I don't know if that seems better than Flexbox so far, but we'll continue.
It seems quite more intuitive, I feel. But...
yeah.
Is it the same if you're using Bootstrap grid? Is it the same or no?
Should be does Bootstrap Grid actually use CSS Grid? Boot. Oh no, it'll still use Flexbox Grid. So this CSS Grid is you don't have to include any other libraries. This is already in CSS.
So if designer tell you I'm using 12 columns or something like that, you should build like you show for us. Am I right?
Yeah, you can use I'm gonna should see more examples of using specifying columns, but yeah, you could do it like this. You could have the repeat function to say you want 12 squares for to start with, and place your content like that, and you can we get further on and we can see how it can auto calculate the spacing and the sizing when you're going down on smaller screens. Okay, I think I need to close some stuff probably. Right, so this was the example we just looked at, or similar to the example we just looked at. We have 4 columns, 3 rows, header across the top, footer across the bottom, a sidebar on the left, and then an empty space, and then the main area. And then we just assign those strings to the grid area on the actual items. Okay, grid template is a shorthand for setting grid template rows and grid template columns, as we were doing earlier in a simple declaration. So so grid template rows, and then / grid template columns, the sizings that you want to use. So we have a template here with 9 items. Oh no, why did I? Okay, sorry. No.
I think it would make sense to use grid for the overall layout on regards to like the main parts of the body. Like you have there like footer, header, articles, and a side, and probably flex for a more granular control over the items within those containers, right?
Yeah. But you can also use them for complicated stuff like masonry. I think there's an example a bit lower that I can show you. Sorry. So this is shorthand for specifying the sizing and layout of the rows and columns.
So why is it saying 100 pix is the first item, then auto is the item 2, and then 200 is item 3?
Yeah.
But item 3 looks like it's the same width that item 1, whereas it says 200. Oh, sorry, it's actually the opposite. So first is vertical and next is horizontal. Okay, got it. So is it item 7 that's 200 pix?
Yeah,
In
item 7.
height, I guess. Yeah, got it. Makes sense.
Cool. Okay.
So whenever you start a new project, is that the way would you use grid template to actually lay out like your thinking in terms of like the different blocks?
Yeah, I normally start like if I don't, so I don't fancy myself as a too much of a designer, so like this same kind of have like bright colored or bordered blocks to kind of just quickly get some layout that I guess is common on the web, so I can just start filling out stuff. And I don't use grid at work. I didn't get to use it at my last workplace either for my agency, but I would use it in a new project. At least, yeah, just for the layout.
Right.
But you guys don't have to switch for this if you're not comfortable, or if you prefer Flexbox. This is just some extra tooling you can use. Right. Okay. So we can adjust the sizings of the items, but we can also adjust the spacing in between them. So we call those the gaps. So the grid lines that Chrome would have shown earlier, we can specify the line size. So the column gap here, we can change that to 20. px. Right there. We can also change the row gap. So you have some row spacing there, and grid gap would be the shorthand, so you can do the row gap and the column gap in one line.
And how would it look if each of your items were kind of more complex? So there would be like an image, and then like in our project, like a price tag, and would you have then? So basically, you have your div class grid container, and then you have item 1, item 2, item 3. But what if it's actually more than one div per item?
More than one div per item. It will be contained within each item, and you can then add grid container properties to the individual item, and then, well, which would then become a container, and then add the item properties to the items within that new container, and then it would should cascade.
Got it. So basically, the grid container template class only applies to these items from 1 to 9.
Yeah, so they're
and
direct
you have
children.
maybe another called grid container 2 that you can apply to subdivs within each item. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So this is how you would be able to use grid for the layout and maybe a table or listing of products. Okay. Grid gap. Yeah, so this is the shorthand, as I said. Another visual example. Okay, now we have justify items. Aligns grid items along the inline or row axis, as opposed to align items which aligns around the block or column axis. This value applies to all grid items inside the container. So let's see what justify items does. So right now it's at stretch, which would be the default. Start would justify those items at the start. So they're taking the size of the box. Well, yeah, so it's just some padding around there. Center should center them. Yep. And justify content end should put them at the end. Align items would deal with the row. So the rows are sized evenly, but the items are starting from yeah, they're at the start.
Patrick, I can see the effect as you change the CSS file and how it looks in the browser.
Yeah.
However, for example, like align items class and the one before that, justify items, I guess, I don't see where those are applied to the items in the HTML to the right. Because I only see class item and item one and...
Oh, sorry, you want, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I see it now.
Sorry, align items is here. Yeah, so they're just divs. Most of them are just divs with the item class. Some of them will have maybe have another class name with them. Sorry about that. Center. So they're in the center of their rows. And end at the very bottom. So you've seen similar properties like that. Place items is a shorthand to do both align items and justify items, or in this case I'm just going to do center. I should put them like that. Okay. Just stop me if any of these seem too confusing, but they're very similar to even some of the Flexbox properties. Okay, justify content. If the total size of your grid is less than the size of its grid container, for example, all of your grid items are sized with non-flexible units like px, you can set the alignment of the grid within the grid container. This property aligns the grid along the row axis. Okay. So we have 3 items here. Nice and start maybe the default, yeah. Justify content, center, so all the items evenly in the center, end, places them at the end, stretch should, okay, that's what stretch does. Space around, so spacing around the item, each item. Space between, so space between each item. Space evenly is a equal distance from the from each item to each end, basically. Align content would deal with the rows. So start as usual. Then we have center, end, stretch, space around.
So what's the repeat 3 means?
So it's just it was the function I mentioned earlier. I'm not. It will take.
Sorry.
The that's fine. The amount of times it would repeat the row. So I think if I choose 2, because these are like filling the whole space, like, but you can see that this is not fitting in the container properly. It's not. If it had the space, it would go on the right of the second item, I believe. But we have 3 rows, and the min height is 100 px.
What is 100 px in there? Is it the width for the row?
Is the height. So look here.
And I thought the number of items would be defined by the number of divs you add in your.
Oh,
in your
yeah,
container.
it's still the number of items there. This is the number of rows to repeat. So in an earlier example, you know how when we're doing the templates, you would, if you wanted 6 columns, you would, and 6 columns that are 100 px. I wouldn't be able to do this. Let's do it with this one with columns. So if we wanted 3 100 px columns, it would be 100 px, 100 px. If we had
so that's what you were explaining, that actually it simplifies it by saying, okay.
Yeah. So see this one, it just stops at the 2 columns, and then whatever else comes after goes on to a new row.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, space evenly. I want to say when you're talking about align content, you're dealing with the height of the rows, but and the other way around for justify, but just practice, you'll get used to using them. Place content is shorthand for both justify content and align content. So yeah, the align content value and the justify content value. Which does that for these items. Grid auto column and grid auto rows. Specifies the size of any auto-generated grid tracks. Implicit tracks get created when we have more grid items than cells in the grid, or when a grid item is placed outside the explicit grid. So grid auto columns gives us 200 pixel wide items. 200 pixel wide columns, P4. Sorry, P3. Okay. Right. So in this bit, I think unfortunately, it's more to do with the size of my window. So I don't know why my machine is moving so slowly. Are you seeing these updates quickly, or is it really slow for you guys as well?
I can't really tell, to be honest. It is slow, but I guess we are remotely, so we would expect a bit of a delay.
But it's not like teleporting to a new screen or anything.
Yeah, I agree with Thomas. We see it like any other remote stuff, so we do not notice any difference on your local. It all looks the same as usual to us.
Okay. Okay. And we also have autorows, which
are we gonna at some point, I don't know, today or Wednesday, talk about how to do the formatting for mobile? Because I think this project also, we need to have a mobile version.
yeah.
Did you check my question? My last, I mean, if you go to Slack, check the very last thing that I posted in there, because I was like you, like totally lost until like an hour ago. And like I mentioned, we did cover the media queries before briefly, but that's what we're gonna be using. If you look at my dot image, basically in the CSS file, just create a new media grid and put the rules as they apply to them.
You're doing it already online. Perfect. Nice.
If you get the screenshot that has the Vasil confirmation that that's the right approach, it's basically just creating the CSS rules for whatever the media query applies to that width of the screen.
Got it. Okay. So it shouldn't be that. I mean, it should be. It should not be too complicated.
We can meet sometime later today if we do one, or at any other time. I'm just starting with that, so I'll be happy to have a quick meeting if you want to go over that.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I'm still behind. I'm still on figuring out the filters still. So
okay, we can meet after the class. Just it will be 5 minutes. You'll get it.
Cool. Sorry, Patrick.
No problem. Yeah, I'll check to see if there's a lesson on media queries. Should be a short one, but yeah, those are what you would use to adapt to a mobile layout.
Got it.
Okay, we also have grid autoflow. So right now it is by column. Let's see what row gives us. So flowing by rows there. Let's try row dense and commenting. I wouldn't use those anyway. We can just use grid autoflow. So this is what I was talking about. If you have like different sizes of items and you want to have them very compact and without too many spaces in between, you can let grid calculate all this for you when you use grid autoflow dense. Or I mean, you can use row dense or column dense if you want it to automatically place these items by your row or column first. But you can just use dense, and it does a good job of filling the space for you. Obviously, the order would change. But then when you move into smaller screen sizes, it will also automatically fill little spaces for you. So maybe if you're doing like a website for a photographer, this would be something nice you can use for them. Okay, grid items. Sure, hand setting. Okay, grid. There's a missing slide. Is there? Or are we getting to all these? Probably getting all these. Right, so grid item. When we're dealing with the column start, column end, row start, and row end. If you have grid items that you don't explicitly place on the grid, the auto placement algorithm kicks in to automatically place the items. Probably controls how the auto placement algorithm works. Let's see. So grid item or grid column start 2. So if for whatever reason you wanted the items to start from the second column, then you can do that. If you want the column size to end at 5 in terms of the amount of columns you have, then you can do that as well, and it will take up that amount of space. You can do the same thing for the rows, so this would come down, yeah, so it's from the second row, and you can specify the row end. I believe this would kind of center it, yeah. Sure, you can center stuff easier with Flexbox, but this is pretty good as well. So yeah, shorthands for those ones that we just used: column start, column end, row start, row end, just grid column or grid row. And it looks these are item properties. So I'm sorry again, Ricardo. Grid items. Yeah, and so we can see the grids here as well. And okay, more item properties. Justify grid area, right? Another missing example. But it's just a combination of grid column and grid row. So if you wanted to do everything in one line, yeah, grid row start, grid column start, grid row end, grid row, grid column end. Okay, justify self. So if you wanted to target a specific item to be justified differently from the others, you can do that as well. So justify self start. End and center. you can also do align self. So again, with the, it's to do with the rows. So start, and it's still just that one with the plus, right, end and center. And then place self would be the shorthand. So align and justify on one line. Yeah. Okay, very short. Have you ever seen this before? CSS garden, grid garden?
Nope.
No.
Yeah. So you can practice grid here in the comfort of the browser. I haven't used it before, but I heard of it. For example, we'll water the area starting at the third vertical grid line, which is another way of saying the third vertical border from the left grid. Okay, so we want the water to be there. Okay, pretty cool. Cool. I'll post that inside the chat, but that is pretty much it. Do you guys want to go through any other examples, or maybe try to build something from scratch? Or do you feel like you could take away you could probably just go and get deep into this and use some of these properties? Do y'all get access to the slides afterwards, or just the video?
Yeah, we get access to the slides.
Okay, yeah, so you can use these as documentation, but I'm sure there's a lot of documentation on CSS Grid. So this would give you some more visual ideas of how grid works. And on that note, how many of you would actually try using it in your current project, and how many will stick with Flexbox?
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a try. I guess Ricardo is maybe more advanced on his project, so if I had done it already with Flexbox, then I would keep with Flexbox. But as I said, we have this kind of layout e-commerce with 9 boxes. I guess this grid thing makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I think if I would have this info before, I would have used it. But at this point, most of that part of the front end is done with Flex. So I'll just probably just stick with what I have, but this will be very helpful to start with and then get into the grain detail with Flex, but it's good info.
Cool.